The story begins on a snowy night outside a magnificent palace, where a young woman, with red hair screams that she can no longer bear this situation, and demands to return to the original home, where she used to live. Her maid approaches and addresses her as young Grand Duchess, asking her to calm down, but the young woman rejects this title and shouts at her in anger. The young Duchess wonders indignantly how she could possibly seem calm, while living as the wife of that scoundrel, expressing her categorical refusal to spend her life with someone like him. The young Duchess turns to her maid Hannah and reproaches her, wondering why even she does not understand her feelings and suffering. Hannah tries to explain her position, saying she did not mean it that way, but her words are lost in the midst of the Duchess's rage. The Duchess shouts at Hannah, warning her not to approach, and says she would rather die than live her life being dragged along. In this manner, she retreats and falls into frozen waters. Hannah screams in horror as she watches her mistress disappear into the cold water, and the echo of her cry, "My lady," resonates throughout the place. The next scene shows the young Duchess lying unconscious. While the sad words of someone are heard wondering how she could do such a thing to herself, a young nobleman appears, presumably her husband, wondering sadly if she truly hates him to that extent, to the point that she tried to end her life. The protagonist retrieves her memories, explaining that she was an orphan girl adopted by a kind family. But she soon realized that their kindness was merely an illusion, as her happiness was shattered when they had a biological child. From due moment on, she felt she was no longer part of the family and became lonely once again. The protagonist explains that this feeling of loneliness is what led her to become attached to a novel titled Please Hug Me. The reason for her attachment to the novel was that the life of the protagonist resembled her own to a great extent, as he was constantly threatened by his biological father and stepmother. The novel's hero was forced to live in a state of constant caution regarding everyone around him, which made the protagonist feel deep empathy for him. The protagonist remembers that on that day, she was walking in the street reading the novel when she suddenly found herself in front of a speeding car. Under the water, she sees a girl with red hair and wonders in confusion, "Who is this?" When she wakes up, she finds herself in a new body with pomegranate-colored curly hair and blue eyes, a very rare appearance among those with red hair. The protagonist realizes that she has reincarnated as a character from the novel she has read thousands of times and could not fail to recognize. She discovers that she has become Rowena Hadel Ross, the ex-wife of her favorite character from her beloved novel, Please Hug Me. Rowena's relationship with her husband, the story's hero, was extremely bad, which explains the hatred she harbored for him. The protagonist realizes she is now that ill-fated ex-wife, whose destiny is death in the novel. Despite this tragic fate, the protagonist sighs and decides to accept the reality, as there is nothing she can do to change it. She thinks to herself that she wasn't very attached to life originally, and she should be grateful for this opportunity. The protagonist decides to take advantage of this new situation, and intends to enjoy looking at her favorite character as much as she pleases. She becomes excited about the idea of being a happy fan, dedicating herself entirely to supporting her favorite character. But she soon feels something strange, as the room she wakes up in is extremely cold, and she is wearing sleepwear. Hannah tells her she had been unconscious for a whole month on the brink of death, and only woke up when her breathing stopped and they began preparing for her funeral. The protagonist feels strange, as she remembers that Rowena does indeed die in the novel, but not this early in the story. Suddenly, a loud noise interrupts her thoughts and she turns wondering about its source, then rises quickly, calling the name Arkid. Rowena bursts through the office door to find a shocking scene. Blood stains on the floor and a man standing over her young husband Arkid, who is sitting on the floor, making her wonder in horror what is happening. Rowena notices the wound on Arkid's forehead, as he wipes away the blood, and she calls out to him in shock. "Lord Arkid." Rowena flares with rage and screams at the man, wondering how he dares to harm her Arkid and leave a wound on his face. The man, who seems to be Arkid's tutor, addresses her as young Grand Duchess and points out that it is improper for her to burst into the room during a lesson. Rowena justifies her action by saying she heard strange sounds coming from inside. The teacher downplays the matter, claiming it was just a simple accident during physical punishment, and that the young Duke tripped when he disgracefully refused his punishment. Rowena stamps her foot on the ground in anger and confronts the teacher. Baron lurks, denouncing his justification as illogical. So the Baron approaches her, wondering sarcastically if she thinks he is lying. The Baron coldly suggests they ask the person concerned, namely Arkid, to confirm his version, which puts the young boy in a critical position. Arid appears, clenching his hand in tension and anxiety. Unable to speak, Rowena intervenes firmly and declares that what Baron Lurk is doing is not physical punishment but abuse. The Baron's features darken, and he repeats her word abuse. Then asks her threateningly if she is sure she won't regret these words. Rowena responds with a defiant look and asks him directly if he is threatening her now. It is revealed that the reason for the Baron's reckless behavior towards Rowena and Arkid is that his younger sister was the mistress of Grand Duke Hadel Ross, Arkid's father. The Grand Duke was very generous with his mistress and treated her brother, the Baron, with an equal measure of preference and favoritism. As a result, the Baron exploited his power without restraint, unaware that all these privileges could disappear overnight like a mirage. Events return to the present, where Rowena thinks to herself sarcastically that the Baron will be disposed of within a month anyway. Rowena challenges the Baron, saying he is the one who will regret this, and asks him what kind of teacher dares to strike the young Duke on the head. The Baron responds with a sarcastic smile, commenting on her coarse language, and places all the blame on the young Duke for failing to perform his preparatory duties. Rowena is surprised and looks at the massive pile of books on the desk, screaming in denunciation, and wondering what preparation he is talking about. Rowena confronts the Baron, pointing at the books, asking him if he truly believes that this amount can be absorbed by anyone in one day, adding that her older brother's lessons were never this intense. She explains that she remembers her brother struggling with less than half this amount, or even a quarter of it. The Baron answers with a regrettable coldness that most people manage to accomplish this amount without a problem. So Rowena gets angry and accuses him of calling her brother stupid, which the Baron tries to deny in confusion. Rowena continues to twist his words, saying he considers this amount basic, and since Mary's April finds it difficult, he is calling her a fool. So the Baron tries to clarify that the mayor's is still young. Rowena exploits his words, agreeing that her brother is 15 years old and is also very young, then asks him about her husband's age. The Baron stammers and answers that Arkid is 14 years old. So, Rowena replies that he knows very well that her husband is younger than her brother. The Baron tries to justify his position by saying that the young master is destined to become the Grand Duke and to compensate for 13 years of miseducation. A full day is not enough. Rowena explodes in anger again, accusing the Baron of insulting her husband now as well, interpreting his words as calling Arkid stupid because he is an illegitimate son. Rowena looks at the Baron with disdain, describing him as disappointing, and tells him that he is nothing more than a stupid teacher who blames his incompetence on his students. The Baron's anger reaches its peak, so he asks her sharply if she has finished speaking and raises his hand in the air as if he is about to slap her. Rowena challenges the Baron with a confident smile, inviting him to get angrier and dare to touch her, promising him that she will show him the meaning of true cruelty. But in a sudden moment, Arkid intervenes and stands in front of her to protect her, ordering the Baron in a firm tone to stay away from his wife. The Baron looks at Arkid with disdain and orders him to get out of his way, addressing him by the title young Grand Duke. Arkid refuses to step aside and asserts his position, warning Baron Lurk not to touch his wife, even with his fingertips. Signs of astonishment appear on Rowena as she looks at Arkid, who tells the Baron that he has endured as much as he could. Arkid declares that he doesn't care what the Baron might do to him personally, but his wife is a red line that must not be crossed. Arid repeats his firm stance that he doesn't care what he might be subjected to, but no one should dare touch his wife. Rowena is filled with pride as she thinks of her boy's courage, then gently takes his hand, making the Baron take a step back in surprise. The Baron suddenly changes his tone, claiming with a forced smile that he did not realize the Grand Duke had misunderstood him in this way. The Baron bows, apologizing if his words or actions were somewhat harsh. Rowena intervenes while holding on to Arkad's arm, offering her sarcastic apology to the Baron because she described him as a complete idiot. The Baron flares with anger and trembles from the insult, while Arkad stands defensively in front of his wife. After receiving the double insult, the Baron turns in anger and leaves the room in a hurry. Rowena watches him go and thinks sarcastically that he has likely rushed to complain to his younger sister. She turns to Arkad and reassures him, promising that she will protect him. Arkad asks her coldly how long she intends to hold on to him, so she pulls her hand back, surprised by his reaction. Arkad turns his back to her and tells her he doesn't know what motive made her help him, but her intervention was not necessary. Rowena asks him in astonishment if it is unnecessary for a wife to help her husband. Arkad repeats the word husband in a sad tone, then asks her if he has ever been a real husband to her at any time. As he moves away from her, Rowena calls out to him, asking him to wait. She shouts after him to make sure to treat his wound and threatens that she will come looking for him if he doesn't, making him stop for a moment. Ark answers without turning around that he will hide the wound well so as not to cause any problem, and asks her not to worry. Rowena watches him depart, realizing he misunderstood her completely, for her intention was entirely different. Later that night, the Grand Duke, Arkad's father, summons Rowena and tells her he heard she intervened in Baron Lurk's lesson today. In the reception room, the Grand Duke sits next to his mistress, Lady Lurk, and asks Rowena sharply about the meaning of her behavior. Rowena ignores the Duke and addresses Lady Lurk directly, asking coldly if the Baron only mentioned that she intervened in the lesson, hinting that he hid the truth. Lady Lurk responds with feigned anger, wondering if Rowena is hinting that her brother hid his mistakes and mentioned only what was in his favor. Rowena smiles sarcastically and replies that she didn't say that, but it seems Lady Lurk has a guilty conscience. So, the Duke interrupts them in a firm voice, asking them to stop. The Duke reminds Rowena that Baron Lurk is the appointed tutor of the Grand Duke and that even if she is the wife of the Grand Duke, she must have a good reason for her action. Rowena looks at the Duke with disdain, thinking to herself that he only pampers her because she is his mistress. Arkad steps forward to stand in front of Rowena and whispers to her that he will handle this matter himself. Rowena is surprised by the stance and wonders to herself why he suddenly appeared dependable while he nods his head, confirming his decision. Happiness fills her heart and she thinks that if he continues in this way, she will love him more and more. But she soon pulls herself together, realizing she is the one who started the situation, and does not intend to throw the responsibility on Arkad. She whispers to him reassuringly that she will take care of the matter, and asks him not to worry. Rowena declares before everyone that her intervention in the lesson was correct, but the reason is that Baron Lurk was abusing her husband under the guise of physical punishment. The Grand Duke repeats the word abuse in a questioning tone, with a serious look on his face. Rowena continues her explanation, clarifying that she heard a loud noise coming from Arkad's study room. She describes the scene dramatically, claiming she found her husband collapsed and bleeding profusely with a sharp quill and scattered ink on the floor beside him, admitting to herself that she is exaggerating a bit from her perspective as an obsessed fan. The Grand Duke touches Arkad's face, who confirms he is fine. Rowena intervenes enthusiastically and tells the Duke that Arkad was not fine, but was bleeding and that the Baron threw the tool at him so hard that he couldn't stand up. Rowena thinks that Arkad might wonder why she is acting this way, because he preferred the situation to pass quietly, but she's determined to make sure her husband is never touched again. Lady Lurk begins to cry and ask the Duke to stop, claiming that His Highness is speaking without knowing the full situation, because he only witnessed the end. Lady Lurk clings to the Duke and tells him that her brother told her that the young Duke is accustomed to lying and was causing problems by refusing punishment, and she pleads that he has been misunderstood. The Duke looks at her sharply and asks her if she is saying it's normal for a teacher to strike his student. So, she answers in the affirmative if it is necessary, which falls into the trap. Rowena smiles to herself, realizing that this is the end of the Grand Duke's fleeting mistress number 1. It turns out that the Grand Duke had recently presented a bill to the council to ban child abuse and physical punishment, and that he cannot turn a blind eye to the matter just because the perpetrator is his mistress's brother. The Duke tells Lady Lurk coldly that she can leave because he is tired. So, she is surprised and asks him if she really has to leave like this. So, he repeats his order to leave. Lady Lurk screams in his face, reminding him of his promise to reprimand the Grand Duchess. The Duke asks her in a glacial tone since, when she started answering back to him, and refusing his orders, he declares coldly that he prefers she no longer frequents his castle, and that he will order her room to be vacated, which shocks her greatly. One of the servants comes to lead her out while she screams and asks him to leave her. Lady Lurk is dragged out of the room, screaming in the Duke's face, wondering how he could do this to her. Unaware that the Duke's true interests were purely political, the Duke turns to Rowena and begins talking about this matter. Rowena interrupts him immediately with a gentle gesture and reassures him that she won't speak a single word about the subject. The Duke allows them to leave, so they bow to him politely. Rowena wishes the Duke a good night and addresses him by the title Father. The Duke is surprised by this word, as it seems it is the first time she has addressed him this way. Rowena takes Arkad's hand and tells him cheerfully, "Let's go," addressing him as darling. Arkad freezes, surprised by her touch, while Rowena suddenly remembers that their relationship is supposed to be that of an unhappy couple. As soon as they exit the reception room, Arkad stops and asks Rowena sharply what on earth she was thinking. Rowena responds with feigned innocence, asking what he means and if a wife's protection of her husband is considered a crime. Arkad tries to clarify that this is not what he meant, but words fail him. Rowena realizes it is difficult for him to understand her sudden behavior, as if she were his bodyguard, and admits to herself that she was planning to take it slow, but the Baron's actions sparked her anger. She approaches him and extends her hand to touch his face, asking him anxiously if he is hurt anywhere. He gently moves her hand away and assures her he is fine. Rowena insists that she is the one who will decide that and asks him to let her see the wound. Arkad looks at her sharply and asks her why she is acting this way. Suddenly, Rowena notices how careful he is as he holds her hand and thinks that he has his own reasons for this caution. It is revealed that Arch had always felt guilty towards Rowena, who married into the family at a very young age. Rowena remembers the original Rowena's harsh words, where she used to blame him and tell him that her life became a disaster since the moment they met. The original Rowena used to scream in his face, warning him not to touch her and describing him as trash. She refused to let him call her my lady and told him bitterly that she did not want to marry an illegitimate son like him. The current Rowena realizes that given the year-long tantrums from the original Rowena, denying her hatred for him now would only arouse suspicion. Rowena lowers her eyes and tells Arkad that he was right, and that she did indeed hate him. But she quickly raises her head and tells him insistently that this was in the past, that she no longer hates him and asks him to believe her. Arkad asks her bitterly if she hadn't tried to drown herself, because she loathed him so much. He continues his speech saying she couldn't stand staying by his side because her husband was an illegitimate son. Rowena realizes that even if she has become Rowena, the undeniable truth is that the original Rowena completely despised Arkad. She admits to him that what he said was true. Arad reveals his pain and asks her about her feeling when she saw him fall into the water, and how she expected him to feel. He tells her that he accepted the fact of her hatred for him, but her suicide attempt made him feel extremely miserable. He covers his face with his hand and wonders to what extent she is trying to make him feel miserable. Rowena tries to stop him, but he moves away and asks her to stop confusing him in this way. Arkid goes to his desk, takes out a paper and tells her he will give her what she always wanted. He presents the paper to her, saying this is what she was constantly asking for. Rowena discovers that they are divorce papers, and Arkid tells her he will provide any alimony she asks for. Rowena screams, refusing that offer, and tears the papers in anger. She declares that she does not want a divorce, refuses to sign the papers, and throws the torn pieces into the air. Arkid looks at her in shock, while Rowena thinks to herself that she finally got her chance and wonders if he has any idea how difficult it is to possess the body of her favorite character's wife. Rowena enthusiastically declares that she objects to this divorce and asserts that there is no turning back. Ark reminds her that she was protesting every day, demanding a divorce. So, Rowena stammers in her response. Rowena admits she made things difficult for him in the past, but promises that won't happen again. Arid asks her in a sad tone how he can believe that. Rowena realizes that if he doesn't believe her, she must play a different card to win his trust. She tells him with feigned sadness that she was not actually trying to commit suicide that day, but rather lost her balance and slipped by mistake. She recalls the scene of her falling into the water and tells him she was truly afraid that day. Afraid of death, she explains to him that had it not been for him saving her, she would be dead now. She thanks him, saying she didn't get a chance to thank him before. So Arkid tells her not to thank him because protecting her is his duty as her husband. She tells him with a smile that it's not just a duty and adds that the water was deep and the day was very cold and that most people would have hesitated to jump in to save her. Arid asks her if she is saying that the incident changed her opinion of him. So she answers in the affirmative to some extent. Rowena thinks to herself that this is the perfect answer for now, and that she must deal with this cautious little cat step by step. Arkid warns her that she will regret her decision, and that this is her last chance to leave. So Rowena refuses this opportunity. She tells him with a bright smile that she will never let him go even if he begs her for a divorce later. Arkid is surprised by her insistence, then answers quietly that he understands. So she asks him happily if he truly believes her. Arkid agrees, then asks her to let go of his hand, which makes her feel extremely happy. She tells him happily that there is no turning back now from this agreement. Later, while bathing, Rowena is surprised by how much Arkid was affected by the shock of her falling into the lake. She remembers hearing that Arkid rushed to save her upon hearing Hannah's scream on that day. Rowena was screaming, demanding to return to her home. She thought Hannah was exaggerating because the original Rowena was always dramatic, and wonders if he did so because he considers even the evil wife part of his family, describing him as a man with a foolishly deep sense of responsibility. She thinks that the real Rowena might have indeed died on that day, but she decides not to care, for she is now Rowena, and she is the closest person to her favorite character. She believes that fate may have given her this opportunity to help Arkid. She remembers that Rowena dies in the novel after 7 years and thinks this duration is sufficient to help Arkid secure his place in the Grand Duchy. But she realizes that the problem is that Arkid and his family hate her deeply. She reviews the family members in her mind. A husband weak due to his excessive sense of duty, a narcissistic father-in-law, a womanizer, an aspiring prince suffering from a personality disorder, and her mother-in-law, known by the title The Mad Dog of Hint, who suffers from a personality disorder. While she thinks about who would be easiest to win over, one of the maids tells her that the lady is looking for her. Rowena panics and wonders why personality disorder number 2 is already calling her. Rowena arrives at her mother-in-law's room, who is sitting reading a book, and asks her politely if she had requested her. Rowena addresses her mother-in-law by the title Mother. The Duchess is surprised by this, commenting that it's unusual, and reminds Rowena that she had always insisted on calling her Grand Duke's consort, thus drawing a clear line between them. Rowena realizes her mistake and thinks to herself that that's how things were between them. But she decides to move forward, saying that since she already called her mother, it would be strange to retreat now. Rowena tells her mother-in-law with a bright smile that she thought about trying to get closer to her from now on. The Duchess responds coldly, surprised by the word closer, and tells her clearly that she does not intend to get close to her, which puts Rowena in an awkward position. Rowena changes the subject and asks about the reason for her summons. So, the Duchess tells her she is still hasty as usual and asks her to sit down first. The Duchess tells Rowena she heard that Lady Lurk was dragged out of the study room crying and asks her sharply what happened. Rowena realizes her mother-in-law summoned her to know the full story, so she answers simply that nothing happened. The Duchess presses her, wondering why Lady Lurk was crying. Then Rowena claims ignorance, then suggests that the Grand Duke might have warned her against coming again, which is why she left crying. Realizing to herself that what the Duke asked her not to talk about was the abuse, not the fact that he dismissed his mistress. Rowena thinks that Lady Lurk, who had been the Duke's pampered mistress for a long time, would never have expected to be disposed of so easily, and that she left just a small piece of evidence so they would search into the matter themselves. She realizes the truth is that the Duke is the one who dismissed her, and not the other way around. The Duchess comments that she noticed Lady Lurk did not attend today, so Rowena answers that her pride might have been wounded, so she didn't show up. Rowena adds that Lady Lurk seemed as if she was still attached to the Duke, so she might return soon. The Duchess agrees, saying it's true that she is unlikely to sit idly by after being asked to separate without a clear reason. Rowena reassures her mother-in-law and tells her that the Grand Duke will not look for Lady Lurk again. So, the Duchess asks her how she can be sure of that. Rowena explains in a childish way that father's eyes were narrowing like this, indicating he was truly angry. The Duchess finds this description strange, but Rowena asserts it is correct. Rowena feels relieved because her mother-in-law's mood seems better and wonders if she is happy because the thorn in her eye has been removed. The Duchess surprises her by asking if Arkad is sick, and Rowena is shocked. The Duchess clarifies she heard the Grand Duke sent a doctor immediately after the incident, and that the doctor went to Arkad's room. Rowena realizes the Duke must have checked Arkad's injuries. She thinks he must have seen the marks on his body and reprimanded him because the Baron didn't just touch his forehead. And since she stopped the Baron immediately, the Duke was certainly angry. The Duchess asks her sharply about the reason for her silence. Rowena hesitates, realizing she cannot tell her that the matter concerns the Lurk family. Rowena finds a way out, telling her that the doctor came to see her to check if there were any after effects from her fall into the water. The Duchess asks her directly if they have not shared a single bed since their marriage. Rowena stammers, then tells her mother-in-law that Arkad started looking a bit different after her fall into the water, and that she also heard he was very worried about her. The Duchess sweats while asking her what she is trying to say. Rowena enthusiastically declares that from now on she will perform her role as his wife. The Duchess wonders sarcastically if Rowena, of all people, is the one who will perform the role of a wife, and Rowena asserts that with confidence. The Duchess wonders what she plans to do exactly, and if she even knows the meaning of performing the role of a wife. And while Rowena hesitates to answer, a knock is heard on the door. Arkad enters the room apologizing for coming without prior notice. Rowena is surprised by his presence and wonders about the reason for his existence here at this time. The Duchess addresses Arkad coldly, reminding him she does not remember giving him permission to enter. Arkad approaches Rowena and stands beside her, telling his mother he heard his wife had been summoned here. The Duchess responds sarcastically, wondering if she can no longer even summon her daughter-in-law as she pleases. Archer tells her that Rowena has not fully recovered yet and needs rest. So, Rowena sighed to herself, saying there is no need to go to that extent. Rowena feels extreme happiness for this protection and thinks that this is the best feeling. While the Duchess notices that anyone listening might think she is about to devour the poor girl, the Duchess gives in and tells them she has asked everything she wanted and that they can leave now. Arkid turns to leave, but Rowena stops him for a moment. Rowena approaches her mother-in-law and asks her to allow her to whisper in her ear for a moment. Rowena whispers in her mother-in-law's ear, wishing her sweet dreams, and adds that it would be better if she dreamed of Rowena, then prints a kiss on her cheek. The Duchess is surprised and stammers, wondering what on earth she is doing while Rowena smiles innocently. Later, the Duchess visits her husband, the Grand Duke, in his office. The Duke asks her about the reason for her visit. She tells him she heard the guest room had been vacated and asks him if he is hinting that she came to a place where she shouldn't be. She continues her speech, reminding him that he used to act as if he couldn't live without Lady Lurk, and now he seems to have grown tired of her. The Duke is surprised by the redness of her cheeks and thinks he thought she was uninterested in his love life. The Duke asserts that Lady Lurk will no longer come to the castle. The Duchess asks him for the reason. The Duke asks her sarcastically since when she became interested in his affairs. The Duchess laughs, saying he misunderstands and tells him she is very interested in all his moves, but only when it concerns his misfortunes. The Duke tells her coldly he didn't realize she cared about his life to that extent. So, she answers, at least now you know. The Duke tells her simply he grew tired of her. She asks him with a cunning smile why then he dismissed her in front of his heir and his wife. The Duke rises from his place and approaches her. He takes her chin and asks her if she wants to know why he did that. The Duchess pushes him gently, reminding him that he is too close. She tells the Duke she heard that he burst into her lessons today. So he answers with a smile that news travels fast. The Duchess wonders how he can claim ignorance and confronts him that he tried to hide the matter from her. Yet he summoned her to his office publicly. So the Duke answers he simply assumed she possessed no interest in him at all. The Duchess remembers Rowena's words when she advised her to ask the Duke directly instead of her. She remembers how Rowena told her that father is starved for affection and that if mother gives him the attention he craves, he will confess everything in a moment. The Duchess thinks to herself she thought Rowena was just a child. But she proved she isn't at all. She asks the Duke why he is staring at her this way. The Duke asks why she just laughed, so she replies with a sigh, wondering if laughing is forbidden now, too. The Duke takes her arm and brings her closer to him, telling her he asked her a question. The Duchess thinks that he is acting like a scoundrel and feels angry. The Duke retreats in surprise and asks, "What on earth?" The Duchess smiles broadly and tells him she thought he wanted to kiss her because he came so close. The Duke tries to deny that in confusion. She tells him she knows he despises her touch just as she despises his touch. The Duchess asserts that the entire empire knows they are practically strangers and have never shared a single bed. She approaches the Duke again and threatens him that if he doesn't want a kiss, he must start talking, and she orders him to tell her what happened in the study room. Later at the dinner table, the Grand Duke announces that Baron Lurk will no longer come to the castle. He addresses Arkid and tells him that if someone insults him again, he should not remain silent. Arid reminds him that he once told him to live as if he were dead. The Duke clarifies that didn't mean he should stand and receive a beating. He advises him to pay back twofold because dealing with the consequences of delivering a punch is much easier than receiving one. Arid answers he will take that into account. Rowena gets angry in her heart and thinks this is a terrible lesson to teach a child and wonders if he thinks the gentle Arkid is like him. It is revealed that Arkid resembles the previous Duke in appearance. But their personalities were entirely different. Unlike the previous Duke who overflowed with self-love, Arkid grew up walking on eggshells, which developed in him a bad habit of interpreting everything negatively. For this reason, he often clashed with the main heroine, Mabel. In the end, he lost her to the main hero, Cerrones, which disgusts Rowena just to think about, but she decides it's all right now. For as long as she is here, Arkid's childhood will not be miserable. One day, Hannah asks permission to enter Rowena's room. Rowena asks Hannah about the reason for the flowers. So, she tells her that the flower festival is approaching and she brought them to change the atmosphere. Rowena wonders about the flower festival in this cold weather. So, Hannah explains it's a festival by name only and it's actually the day they plant the seeds. Hannah explains that since flowers rarely bloom in the barren soil of Delos, they volunteer to plant the seeds themselves. One of the maids wonders how Rowena could be surprised and reminds her she lived in Delos long enough to know that. Hannah adds she assumes Rowena was very confused when she arrived as a bride for the first time, and Rowena agrees. Hannah warns her that she cannot run away this time, as she did in the past, and that the Grand Duchess might reprimand her severely again. Rowena responds enthusiastically that of course she won't run away, and that she will listen well and be an ideal wife from now on. One of the maids wonders sarcastically if she really won't be fickle and cause problems for the Grand Duke again. Rowena shouts in her face, asserting she won't do that, and leaves the room in anger. Meanwhile, Arkid thinks about appointing a new tutor and a swordsmanship teacher for himself. Arkid wonders if his father really meant what he said about responding to abuse. Arkid hears Rowena's laughter and wonders if it's her. Ark approaches the window and hears Rowena's conversation with her maids and thinks that he shouldn't eavesdrop on a private conversation. Arkid hears Rowena enthusiastically declaring that she loves Arkid very much, and he is shocked. Arkid wonders in shock if he heard that correctly. He tries to convince himself this cannot be true, for she is the woman who used to declare her hatred for him every time she opened her mouth, but he remembers she called him darling, and that he felt a slight disappointment when she went back to calling him Arkid. He wonders in confusion why he felt disappointment. Arkid stands bewildered, wondering what is going on in her mind. He sighs and remembers that she told him she hates him. On their way to the festival, Arkid comments he didn't expect Rowena to ask for his help. He clarifies she had never asked for his help before. Rowena remembers that Arch had helped her last year, and it turned into complete chaos, where she screamed in his face wondering who asked for his help. She looks at him and thinks it's a shame. If it were up to her, she would shower him with kisses. Arkid interrupts her thoughts and asks her if she is nervous because her mother reprimanded her due to last year's incident. And he tells her he asked her that question because he noticed her lips were trembling. Rowena admits his mother can be a bit scary when she is angry. So Arkid comments that doesn't match how tender she was with her last time, referring to the kiss on the cheek. Rowena asks if he means the good-night kiss, and Arkid confirms that. She tells him he cannot get close to his mother if he is only afraid of her. Arkid tells her he's not sure how to understand her, for he was extremely nervous until recently. Rowena looks at him kindly and asks him to see her as she is now. Arkid repeats her words, surprised by what she said. Rowena asserts that she means the person standing before him now, and not who she was in the past. Rowena apologizes to Arkid, admitting that she had caused him unnecessary trouble all this time, to which Orsht responds that he was the one at fault. Rowena takes his hand and promises him that she will be better from now on. While he looks at her in surprise, Rowena notices that his hand is cold and reassures him that he should not force himself to suppress his feelings and can speak freely. She tells him with a smile that upon reflection, it wasn't her who was nervous, but him. At that moment, the carriage arrives and Rowena asks him if they are ready to go. Orsht smiles and agrees. Elsewhere, Mrs. Lurk talks with one of her friends. Her friend describes the Grand Duke as cold-hearted because he ended his relationship with her so coldly. Her friend tries to comfort her and Mrs. Lurk replies that it is fine now, as he is not the only man in the world. Her friend tells her she heard that the Grand Duke has already found a new mistress, which shocks Mrs. Lurk. The friend explains that she saw the Hatel Ross family carriage heading toward the seed farm today, and wonders if he went to see the flowers with his mistress. Mrs. Lyric feels angry, thinking that they had been together for 3 full years, and that he should have at least shown some restraint for a month. Her friend comments that all men are like that by nature. She adds that no matter how beautiful Mrs. Law is, men eventually get used to it. She says it is their instinct for their eyes to wander in search of a new flower. Mrs. Law suddenly stands up and tells her friend she must leave. Her friend replies with a cunning smile that it is a pity. Upon their arrival at the seed farm, they are greeted by the manager, Mock, who tells them he was informed in advance of their visit. The manager notes that this is Orisht's first visit since last year. Orisht is surprised and asks if he came here last year, to which Rowena replies that she thinks so. The manager asks anxiously if everything was all right that day, because the Grand Duchess seemed very upset, which worried them. The manager explains that Rowena left that day without saying anything, and that the Grand Duchess was very angry. Rowena reflects that the original Rowena was truly a unique character. Rowena reassures the manager that she is fine today, and has set aside plenty of time, asking him to show her everything. The manager tells her that this year's Delos flowers are particularly beautiful in color, and that if she plants them now, she will see them in full bloom by mid-year. He adds that it is of course possible to accelerate the blooming period with magic. They enter the garden and Rowena is dazzled by the beauty of the flowers. The manager tells her he left a toolkit behind and will go to get it, asking them to take their time wandering, to which Rowena agrees. Rowena expresses her admiration for the beauty of the flowers. Osh tells her he thought she didn't like Delos flowers. He reminds her that at last year's festival, she asked him to throw away the flowers he gave her. Rowena shouts that she doesn't hate flowers. Rowena apologizes, admitting she went too far at that time. Osh smiles and tells her he is happy to hear she doesn't hate flowers. Arid offers that if she likes a specific flower, he will order it to be sent to her room. Rowena wonders to herself, is he an angel or what? Rowena begins to ask for a certain flower, but stops suddenly. Suddenly, Mrs. Lowe appears, rushing toward them, and the manager tries to stop her, saying they have guests. Mrs. Lowe screams, demanding to know where the Grand Duke is, surprising Rowena and Arkid. Arched comments coldly on her insolence, telling her she is in no position to act this way. She retorts sarcastically, accusing him of using his child as a shield. Mrs. Law demands to know the truth, claiming she came because she heard the Grand Duke was here now. Rowena smiles a cunning smile, thinking this is the right time for her intervention, but she suddenly feels dizzy. Rowena wonders in confusion why she is acting this way. Rowena stumbles and falls onto Arkid, who calls out to her anxiously, "My lady." Arkid holds her as she loses consciousness, shouting her name. Rowena wonders what is happening to her, as she closes her eyes. Osh tries to wake her while she thinks in terror, if she's going to die like this. Osh rushes back to the palace carrying Rowena in his arms shouting Ashil. When he enters the palace, the maids gasp in terror, and one of them asks anxiously what happened. Hannah screams when she sees Rowena unconscious, while the butler Akerly asks in shock what happened. Arched orders Akerly in a firm voice to call the doctor immediately. After a while, Rowena lies unconscious in her bed. The doctor tells Arkid that fortunately her life was saved thanks to his quick first aid. Arkid asks the doctor about the cause of her sudden fainting and the doctor concludes it seems like an allergic reaction. One of the maids insists this is impossible because her mistress never suffered from such a condition before, but the doctor confirms the symptoms indicate shock caused by a severe allergy. The doctor asks if she went somewhere with a lot of pollen today. The maid replies they went to the seed farm, adding that it's strange because in April Castle she wandered around fine even with the change of seasons. The doctor suggests her immune system weakened upon coming to the Hatterlow's territory. Arka thinks to himself that he believed her rosy cheeks were just her natural charm, then asks the maid if there are Delos flowers in the palace. The maid replies in the negative saying she saw them for the first time here. Arkid asks if Rowena showed similar symptoms at this time last year. The doctor says he will need to check the records. Suddenly, the maid remembers and screams that her mistress was also sick like this last year. She explains that the symptoms seemed mild then, but her cheeks were very red, just like now. Osht asks her if that was the day she returned alone after going out with her mother. The maid is surprised and asks how he knew since her mistress asked her to keep it a secret. Osht covers his face with his hand as he realizes the horrible truth, sighing that the cause is the Delos flower. Osht concludes the matter explaining that she fainted in a field of Dos flowers, and that if there were no Delos flowers in April Castle, they might never have known about her allergy. Osht wonders why they didn't perform a comprehensive check if she was diagnosed similarly last time. The doctor explains the symptoms were mild. Then Arshid thinks about the incompetence of the servants who don't even care about the young lady's health, realizing he had tolerated their indifference because of his origin, but he never imagined their neglect would extend to her as well. Osht wonders why Rowena hid her allergy. He thought she was proud, arrogant, and stubborn, and wonders if she did it because she didn't want anyone to discover her allergy to the Delos flower since she was to become the Grand Duchess of Hattal Ross. Arshid feels guilty thinking he should have expected to care for her anyway since she is his wife. He tells the doctor firmly that this matter will not be ignored. When Rowena wakes up, she finds Osht's hand holding hers and feels surprised. She wonders to herself why Arshid is sitting next to her. She wonders if he stayed by her side all night, thinking that perhaps he couldn't leave her alone because they are husband and wife. Osht wakes up at that moment and she greets him. Arka jumps up and asks her anxiously if she is okay and if she feels any pain. Rowena reassures him that she is fine, telling him she was scared at first because she lost her sense of smell completely. But now she feels completely better. Thinking that Osht's face, when he just woke up, is electrifying. She asks him if he was worried about her. Rowena thinks to herself she shouldn't have asked, for Arshid would never worry about her, but he surprises her and answers in the affirmative. Rowena is very happy, thinking blissfully that Arshid said he was worried about her, wondering if anyone else had ever been nursed by their favorite person. Arshid places his hand on her forehead and tells her there is still a slight fever. She tells him she truly thought she was going to die, but strangely it ended in one day. Osht tells her it lasted 10 days, which shocks her. Osht tells her that of course he was worried, for he is her husband and she had almost died again. He tells her she cannot imagine what he felt being by her side for 10 days. He continues that he kept wondering if something was wrong because she didn't get out of bed. He admits that if something bad had happened, he wouldn't even have known where to offer his apologies. Rowena calls his name while holding his hand. Rowena reassures him that she is fine and asks him to look at her, for she is in front of him now. Osht realizes she is right, and Rowena thinks to herself that she was the one who made Arshid suffer like this. Rowena asks about the reason for her fainting. Osht tells her it was an allergy to the Delos flower. She is surprised because these flowers are everywhere in Hattos. Arshid tells her not to pretend ignorance, and that she fainted from something similar last year as well. Rowena is surprised and wonders how the original Rowena endured living in Delos. Then remembers that in the original novel, Arshid always remembered his late wife upon seeing Delos flowers. His late wife hated that flower so much that it was not allowed to bloom at all in the castle where they lived. Rowena realizes this is why the original Rowena made such a fuss about the allergy. Arshid tells her she cannot hide something like this and should have been honest, then asks her if the reason was him. Arshid wonders if Rowena would have told him clearly if he were a husband she could rely on more. Rowena shouts, denying that. Rowena apologizes and promises she will tell him everything from now on and will not lie to him. Osht smiles and promises he will do his best. Osht adds that he will do so that his wife can rely on him. Elsewhere, the Grand Duchess visits Mrs. Law, and the latter wonders why she is trembling just from seeing her. The Duchess asks Mrs. Law if she is unhappy to see her. The Duchess remembers how her mother begged her for help after hearing she was arrogant in front of the children. She also remembers how Orish had asked her to make sure Mrs. Law never appeared before the Grand Duke's consort again. That was the first time the Duchess saw the boy, who usually cannot even look into anyone's eyes, begging her with his gaze. The Duchess tells Mrs. Law that she dared to act without knowing her place toward the Grand Duke and his wife. The Duchess declares that she wants Mrs. Law to leave the Hattal Ross territory immediately. At that time, Rowena was being scolded and one of the maids asks her how she could say such a thing. One of the maids scolds her because she didn't even think about the worried servants. But Hannah interrupts, saying it's not like she got sick on purpose. The other maid adds that the fault lies with that quack doctor, and that if he had examined her properly when she was sick last year, the young lady wouldn't have been wandering around in this state. Hannah says it is still a relief that thanks to Lord Arkid, a good personal doctor came. Rowena comments that she didn't expect Lord Arkid to go see the Grand Duke himself. One of the maids says it was the first time, feeling that Lord Arched is the only one who truly cherishes their young mistress, which impresses Rowena. Another maid scolds them, reminding them they were complaining the day before that he was putting up an iron wall around her. One of them defends him, saying it's good that the new personal doctor is very thorough. The maids agree that the doctor named Marsa is very vigilant. Rowena thinks the reason for his good treatment of her is that he doesn't know her tongue is from hell. Rowena worries about the upcoming flower festival, thinking things were already bad between her and her mother-in-law, and she has made them worse now, so the Grand Duchess must be in a terrible mood. One of the maids asks her if she has thought about the type of seeds they will scatter. The other maid replies she doesn't know, and that she will probably use the same seeds as last year because scattering seeds is just a hassle. Another maid sarcastically comments that this is unromantic, and if that's the case, they should go and shake dandelion fluff. Rowena admires the idea, considering it a truly good one. Rowena stands up and announces she is going to see her mother. The maids ask where she is going, especially since they heard the Duchess is going to the seed farm today. Suddenly, Hannah notices the arrival of a carriage. Rowena gets excited and shouts to herself, "Strike while the iron is hot," asking the maids to go with her. Rowena arrives and shouts, calling the Duchess, "Mother," waving to her after she returned. Rowena rushes enthusiastically to greet her returning mother-in-law. But in her excitement, she trips on the stairs and plunges forward, screaming in dismay. As she is about to hit the ground, she closes her eyes, expecting the fall. But she suddenly finds herself in her mother-in-law's arms, who catches her and comments sarcastically on this enthusiastic welcome. Rowena is surprised by this unexpected situation, feeling like a small puppy waiting for its owner's return. Rowena stammers in response. The Duchess asks her why she returned and caused all this commotion. Rowena explains that she came because she had a matter to discuss regarding the flower festival. The Duchess looks as though she expected this and invites her to come with her. While they sip tea, Rowena initiates the conversation, telling her mother-in-law she heard her allergy caused her a lot of trouble. The Duchess's anger flares and a terrifying aura appears around her, as she demands the name of the maid who told her this. Rowena quickly backtracks and explains it was just an assumption, and no one told her. The Duchess coldly tells Rowena there is nothing to be done, that she handled the matter alone last year, and that help now would only be a burden. Rowena feels upset by these hurtful words, but Rowena insists she wants to help and tells her she has a good idea she'd like to propose. The Duchess looks at her skeptically, wondering how someone like her could have a good idea. Rowena explains she noticed seed sales are high every year, but few people actually scatter them because they consider it tedious work. Then she proposes her innovative idea, suggesting planting flowers not in the ground, but in the sky. The Duchess calls the idea ridiculous and impossible. Rowena explains her plan in more detail, placing seeds inside sky lanterns and releasing them. This way, seeds are scattered and a beautiful memory is created simultaneously, killing two birds with one stone. She adds that since Delos flowers come in rainbow colors, the lanterns can be made in diverse and matching colors. The Duchess seems amazed, admitting she didn't realize Rowena cared about the Torito's affairs to this extent. The Duchess adds she thought Rowena would demand to burn all Delos flowers. Rowena gets angry and asks if she sees her as a wild monster. Rowena explains her position calmly, saying that as long as she doesn't go where the flowers are, it is fine, and that flowers everyone loves cannot be banned just because of her. The Duchess goes back to thinking about Rowena's allergy again. Rowena asks her mother-in-law what she is thinking. The Duchess ignores her question and decides to end the conversation, telling her she will discuss the idea with the servants herself. Rowena stands to leave. The Duchess notices that Rowena, calling her mother, has started to sound natural and spontaneous, and lets her leave with a slight smile. Upon exiting, Rowena is surprised to find Arkid waiting for her. He asks anxiously why she was in his mother's room and if she was scolded. Rowena enthusiastically denies this, telling him she felt she was just enjoying the flower festival without providing any help. So she came to see if there was anything she could do. Then Rowena asks Arkid about his destination. He hesitates a little in answering. Rowena immediately guesses he is going to the training grounds. Arkid is surprised by her knowledge and asks how she knew. She replies simply that he goes at this time every day, but she soon realizes her words might sound as if she is spying on him and constantly watching him. She tries to fix the situation in confusion, claiming she guessed it because of his clothes, which look like a training uniform, and assures him she is not a pervert secretly following him. Osh smiles gently and reassures her that he never thought of her that way, adding that even if she did, he wouldn't mind, telling her she is free to do as she pleases. Rowena is surprised by his permission to do as she pleases, wondering if this is truly allowed. Realizing that if she actually did everything she wanted, he would have been terrified, she gives free rein to her imagination, picturing herself greeting him morning and evening, surrounding herself with his pictures, and wishing him a good night's sleep. She also imagines herself watching him secretly while he goes about his daily activities. Just thinking about these things excites her intensely, but she realizes she must keep these feelings to herself. Her excitement reaches the point of thinking about starting a fan cafe for him. The scene moves to the crowded festival hall, where the festival is held in the warmest season, attracting visitors from far away. For this reason, a separate party for children is organized. Rowena takes this rare opportunity for them to appear together in such a gathering and asks Osh to be her escort. Osh agrees to her request, takes her hand gently, and they walk through the hall together. Rowena notices that everyone's eyes are on them, guessing the reason is her presence with Arkid. Suddenly, a girl with pink hair calls her enthusiastically. Rowena recognizes her immediately. Rowena remembers a scene from the original novel where this girl Diana intentionally spilled water on our shed, lying that she was watering flowers, and slipped by mistake. Then the original Rowena mocked him, saying his clothes were completely wet, and he wouldn't be able to enter the party looking like that. She added insolently that he surely wouldn't want to disappoint the Grand Duke. Then she laughed with her friends, asserting he would become a laughingstock to everyone. In that incident, Arkid merely agreed with Rowena's words and then excused himself to leave without doing anything. This passive withdrawal was what enraged the original Rowena, who couldn't bear his dull reaction after all the trouble she had faced. But in the present, Diana intervenes and grabs Rowena to pull her away from Arkid. Diana pretends to be worried and asks if she is okay. Diana asks Rowena what is wrong, hinting maliciously that Arkid must be holding a weakness over her. Rowena pushes her hand away and asks sarcastically if attending a party, as a married couple, is considered a weakness. Diana is flustered and tries to deny it, but Rowena assures her she knows well that she has nothing to say. She tells her that this is enough and orders her to leave, leaving Diana in a state of shock and anger. Arkid asks her anxiously if she is truly okay after letting Diana go like that. She replies she didn't intend to stay friends with her anyway. Arshad approaches her and whispers in her ear that she has truly changed. Rowena is surprised by his words. Arshad is flustered by his sudden closeness and apologizes in a hurry. Rowena thinks to herself happily how cute he is when he's flustered. Meanwhile, Diana blocks the path of Arshad, who had just left, calling him young master. She asks him sharply what he did to Rowena. Oisht replies calmly that she speaks as if he had hurt his wife. Diana insists that Rowena is not acting like herself. Oisht asks her if she is hinting that he must have used a weakness against her, then tells her coldly that the only reason he tolerated her presence until now was because she was Rowena's friend. Diana insists she is still her friend. Oisht looks at her with a cold smile and tells her his wife says the exact opposite. Diana freezes in shock, wondering in terror if this is truly the Grand Duke she knew, for he has completely changed. Arshad faces her coldly, telling her she was looking down on him and enjoying her sense of superiority over him, asking if she truly thought he wouldn't notice. Diana tries to deny it in confusion. In the midst of her shock and confusion, Diana stumbles and falls to the ground. Oisht looks down at her and tells her he will overlook her insolence this time only, ordering her to leave before his wife arrives. At that moment, Rowena arrives at the scene wondering what is happening. Diana rushes toward Rowena crying, trying to gain her sympathy and telling her what the Grand Duke just did. But Rowena ignores her completely and rushes toward Arshad, asking him anxiously if he is okay and if Diana bullied him again. Oisht is flustered and denies it. Diana screams at Rowena that she did nothing, but that the Grand Duke was the one who pushed her. Rowena replies sharply that it's impossible for her husband to push her suddenly, and accuses her of surely having done something wrong. Diana explodes in anger, while sitting on the ground screaming at Rowena how she could say that, telling her she doesn't know how scary her husband was. Rowena replies with total coldness, and so which leaves Diana stunned. Rowena approaches her and faces her, wondering why she is complaining to her about her fall, asking who she is to think she has the right to do so. Diana asks, crying, how she could not take her side, reminding her they are friends. Rowena corrects her, saying they were friends in the past. Then Rowena smiles and tells her their friendship is over, asking her to stop bothering her husband and leave. Diana's face is filled with a look of intense anger mixed with humiliation. Diana stands up and declares angrily that it's over and leaves the place. While Rowena thinks to herself the situation was disgusting, hoping not to meet them again. Rowena returns to Oisht and checks on him. He asks her what she would have done if he truly pushed Diana. She replies confidently that she knows he is not the type to hurt anyone without a reason. Wishing she had stayed by his side the whole time. Arshad smiles and tells her he wasn't okay before, but now he is because Rowena defended him. Rowena is surprised and deeply touched by his words, which she didn't expect. She asks him shyly if he just called her by her name. He calmly confirms that happiness fills Rowena's heart, thinking that names were found to be spoken by others. Arshad asks her if it bothers her, and if he should stop showing signs of shyness. Rowena enthusiastically refuses, telling him the title My Lady is good, but calling her Rowena is much better. Oisht smiles and agrees to call her by her name from now on. Rowena feels so happy she fears her life will be shortened because of this sudden amount of joy. Elsewhere, Diana bursts into a room where her mother is sitting with the Duchess shouting her name. Her mother notices the traces of crying on her daughter's face and asks anxiously who dared to bully her. Diana replies that the Grand Duke and Rowena were the ones who did it. The Duchess looks at her seriously and asks exactly what happened between her and the ducal couple. Diana begins to cry brokenly, as she is about to recount what happened. The Duchess notices that Diana must have been very scared and orders a maid to bring her some water. After Diana calms down a bit, the Duchess asks her exactly what happened. While her mother tries to calm the situation, saying that children fight sometimes, Diana tells her mother, crying, that Rowena said she was tired of playing with her and ordered her to leave, which shocks the lady. The Duchess sigh, wondering about the reason for all this commotion. But Diana's mother hits the table in anger, wondering if this is something that can be overlooked. Countess Rake adds that even if they are children, they need a firm hand so they don't grow up spoiled. The Duchess interrupts her while moving a chest piece, telling her coldly that advice should be given by someone in an appropriate position. Then she adds in a threatening tone that the only spoiled person in the room is Countess Rake herself. The Duchess declares her victory in the chess game and tells her this is enough for today. The Duchess stands to leave, commenting sarcastically that her opponent in chess is too boring for her to stay any longer. The Countess tries to stop her, hitting her hand on the table and her drink glass falls to the ground. Suddenly, Diana begins to hiccup. The Countess screams at her to stop that. At the party, Rowena notices that Diana seems quiet and isolated, wondering if it's because she left crying earlier, but she soon feels worried that this situation might put her in a bad spot with her mother-in-law. Deciding she cannot let that happen, Rowena thinks she has a secret weapon of her own and takes out a set of colored gemstones. One of the attendees is surprised and asks her if she bought these stones recently. She tells him it's a tool for a game called Petra, and she made it specially for everyone to enjoy. A young nobleman objects, saying Petra is a commoner's game, wondering why she brought it here. Another girl agrees with him, making Rowena think someone is trying to ruin things from the start. But another girl with blonde hair intervenes enthusiastically, declaring she will try the game because it looks fun. Osh joins them, having been watching the situation, and says he remembers playing it a long time ago. Rowena is happy and suggests they play a three-way individual match. The first young man comments sarcastically, wondering why the Grand Duchess enjoys such a strange game, hinting that the Grand Duke must be the one who taught it to her. Rowena looks at him sharply and asks what exactly he means. The young man claims he spoke out of concern, asking how precious gemstones could be used in a commoner's game. Rowena replies sharply, asking if he is mocking the Hatel-Ross family now. She adds that he is hinting their financial situation is so deteriorated they might worry about a few gemstones. The young man tries to backtrack and apologize, claiming what he meant was that the Grand Duke seems familiar with commoner games. Rowena explodes in anger, telling him his words sound like a stab at her husband's origins. The young man desperately tries to explain he didn't mean that. Finally, the young man apologizes while feeling extremely embarrassed. Rowena thinks if this continues, it will ruin the party's atmosphere again, and declares she didn't bring this game just for entertainment. She orders Hannah to bring a box and declares that what's inside is a gift she prepared for all the honored guests. When the box is opened, a collection of sparkling gemstones appears. The young man is stunned and asks if she will truly give these stones to everyone. Rowena confirms with a smile she will give gemstones to everyone, then cleverly addresses the young man, who objected, telling him she is sure a young master, who despises commoner games, will not need one. The scene moves to the children playing Petra enthusiastically. One girl declares she almost won while Rowena says she is the one who will win this round. Osht comments that she seems very experienced in the game. Rowena replies she was always a quick learner. Osht asks if the maids taught her. She confirms that and adds playfully that they were keeping all the fun to themselves. Osht smiles and tells her it's good to see her on good terms with the maids. Rowena looks at him with a meaningful look and tells him she wants to be on good terms with him, too. Then she adds that she means, for example, sharing a bed. Archt is flustered and lowers his gaze and shyness from her bold look. Meanwhile, a girl asks Rowena if she went to the seed scattering festival. Another girl answers enthusiastically that she went as soon as it opened, describing how the sky lanterns filled with seeds floated in the air with breathtaking beauty. Another girl comments that she heard they used mana stones to determine the direction, and that the Hatel-Ross family artifacts must be impressive. Rowena feels shocked at their ability to turn mana stones into artifacts. She thinks to herself that it was more useful than she expected and feels the desire to see the scene for herself. Osht notices her interest and asks if she would like to go too. Rowena refuses on the grounds that Delos flowers will be everywhere, and she will suffer from allergies if she goes. Osht tells her it's not necessary to go to the heart of the action. Osht tells her he knows a place from which they can watch the release of the Dio's seeds from a distance. Rowena is surprised and realizes this offer sounds like an invitation to a romantic date. When Osht begins to back down, saying it's okay if she doesn't want to go, Rowena interrupts him enthusiastically, declaring she wants to go very much. She confirms to him with a bright smile she wants to go with him. Later, the family members gather where the Grand Duke, Osht's father, comments that he heard Rowena was buying gemstones in large quantities, wondering if she had taken up beadwork as a hobby. He adds that he heard later she was distributing strange souvenirs at the party. Rowena corrects him that they weren't strange souvenirs, but a game called Petra, explaining it's a popular game among the common people and very enjoyable. The Duchess wonders about the name of the game. The Grand Duke comments that it's strange for he doesn't think the common people have the money to buy gemstones. Rowena thinks he talks like a true nobleman. The Duke adds she should have used larger stones, and that her generosity seems less than he expected. Rowena asks him if he thinks she did that because she is stingy with her jewels. Rowena challenges the Duke to wait and see for himself, then performs a magical movement with the stones. She explains to him that this size is perfect for a child's grip, which impresses the Duke. The Duke asks her to show him more, asking how it is played. Rowena cleverly suggests that Azhid is the one who will explain the rules to him. Azhid is surprised by this request while Rowena thinks this family desperately needs something to break the ice between them. Rowena suggests they split into teams and place a small bet, but the Duchess refuses coldly, saying she is uninterested. Rowena provokes the Duke and Duchess with a sarcastic laugh, wondering if they are truly worried about the possibility of losing, adding, "It's better to withdraw than endure the humiliation of defeat before a child." The Duke and Duchess fall into the trap of the challenge and agree to the bet. The Duchess orders him not to start crying when he loses, while Rowena thinks to herself that these two easily fall into the trap of any challenge, on their way back in their carriage. Rowena thinks she cannot believe how Arshid's parents got so excited over a game against a child. She expresses her anger to Arkid that his parents started bragging as soon as they won against them. Osht agrees with her, but adds it was fun anyway, and that he never thought they might participate in such a game. Rowena tells him the festival atmosphere certainly helped. Arkid tells her with a smile he believes this is the first time he has done something with both of them. Rowena is touched to see his happiness over such a simple thing. She holds Arshid's hand and promises him there will be many similar moments in the future, because she will make sure of it. They arrive at the place Osht promised her, and watch together the scenic view of the glowing lanterns releasing seeds over the city. Rowena expresses her intense awe at the sight. Rowena contemplates Arshid's beauty as he looks at the lights, lamenting the lack of cameras in this world to immortalize this moment. She thinks that this level of beauty must be preserved forever. Arkid notices her gazes and asks if there is something on his face. Rowena is flustered and claims there's nothing while thinking to herself his face is full of attractive handsomeness. Rowena shyly asks Osht about the reason for his look at her in this way. He answers her with a mysterious smile that there is no reason for it. After the festival ends, the Duchess summons Rowena. The latter wonders about the reason for her sudden summons. The Duchess tells her she left something on the table and asks her to take it with her. Rowena discovers that what her mother-in-law left is a box full of gold bars, and is hit with shock and amazement. The Duchess explains this amount is her commission for the idea of the sky seed lanterns. The Duchess adds she assumes Rowena didn't know that because this is the first time she performed her duty as a Grand Duchess. She explains to her that the Hattal Ross family strictly depends on merit for rewards and they provide commissions to anyone who suggests a viable idea, or a successful business plan. Rowena is happy and wonders enthusiastically if this means she will continue to receive commissions for the rest of her life. The Duchess mocks her, saying she looks as though she has never seen all this money before and tells her there are more boxes of gold in her private vault. Rowena is hit with an even greater shock. Rowena realizes with great excitement that with this amount of money, she can live the most lavish life of a fangirl imaginable. She thinks there is only one way to dedicate herself to her goals as a fan. Elsewhere, a man named Lord Cabeston sits sipping tea, sighing because he hasn't had a quiet time like this in a while. His quiet is interrupted by the arrival of a servant who tells him a guest from the main castle has arrived. Lord Cabeston is surprised for he knows the Grand Duke should be away on a business trip today. The servant tells him the Grand Duchess is the one who requested this meeting. The Lord spits tea from his mouth in shock. Rowena enters his office and tells him she came because she has a favor she'd like to ask of him. Tension and fear appear on Lord Cabeston's face. Rowena tells him the truth with a bright smile, explaining that she came looking for him because she heard he was the one who made those sky lanterns. Lord Cobain is deeply shocked by her words. In a sudden reaction, the Lord throws himself to the ground before her, declaring in a trembling voice that he has committed a sin deserving of death, leaving Rowena bewildered and wondering what is happening. It turns out that his exaggerated reaction stems from a painful memory, as he recalls how the original Rowena screamed at him in anger after her hair was burnt, demanding that he take responsibility. Lord Cabeston apologizes with deep regret, admitting he was flustered by her sudden request and lost his mind, promising her that he will find an artifact to restore her hair to its former state. The memory continues where the original Rowena was demanding he be ready by tomorrow. An impossible request that filled him with panic. She was screaming at him in rage that the ball would be held tomorrow, asking if he wanted her to become a laughingstock in front of everyone with her burnt hair. In a desperate attempt to calm her, he promised he would do everything in his power. The events return to the present, and Rowena realizes that Lord Cobain is truly terrified and that this fear is the result of his trauma from dealing with the previous Rowena. She feels sorry for his condition, thinking that he looks like an exhausted employee who has suffered much. So she decides to change her approach and offers him a gold bar. She apologizes to him, admitting that she might have pressured him too much lately and promises him that she will ensure he receives good pay and kind treatment from now on. She thinks to herself mischievously that she will drown him in so much money that he will never even think of resigning. The Lord is surprised by her words and asks her what she just said. Realizing with shock that she asked if he was going through a difficult time, not whether he was still capable of surviving, Rowena asks him to sit and tells him that she was the one who suggested the idea of the sky lanterns and made him work overtime. The Lord tries to downplay the matter, claiming he is fine and that this level of overtime is natural for him. Rowena is shocked by the word natural and asks him if he means he is always stuck in the villa. Lord Cabeston confirms this, explaining that the Grand Duke provides him with housing and food, so he lives comfortably, and he doesn't enjoy going out much anyway, but he wonders why she is asking, and Rowena suddenly realizes the truth of his situation. Rowena becomes angry and describes the Grand Duke as a cruel employer, which confuses Lord Cabeston. Rowena confronts him that what he is saying means he works 7 days a week, so he admits that he gets a day off every 2 weeks, but for the most part, her words are correct. Rowena explodes in anger upon hearing that he only gets 1 day off every 2 weeks and screams that this cannot happen. She takes Lord Cabeston's hand gently and comforts him, telling him that he must have suffered greatly all this time. She notices the pallorness of his hands and asks him how long he has spent secluded in his room conducting research, advising him to go out for a little walk. The Lord wonders what the pallorness of hands has to do with walking. While Rowena thinks about the importance of vitamin D and sunlight, so he assures her that he is truly fine. Rowena refuses to believe him and tells him that she will ask Father to grant him a vacation. She confidently tells him to trust her. Lord Cobastine is deeply moved by her kindness. Thanking her while covering his mouth, thinking of her as a true angel, Rowena determines to show them what a great employer truly is. Out of pity for poor Cobe's condition. Meanwhile, Rowena sits somewhere and some maids wonder why she is there, while another says she heard she is performing some kind of protest. Rowena refuses to wear the heavy clothes the maid brings her while the maid tells her she will pass the message to the Grand Duke upon his arrival. The maid explains she is worried because Rowena hasn't fully recovered yet. But Rowena replies that if she wears all these clothes, she will turn into a snowman. Hannah gives in to her mistress's insistence, wondering in despair who could ever face such extreme stubbornness. Rowena bids farewell to her maid Hannah as she leaves, asking her to take care of herself, and continues her wait on the stairs. Suddenly, she hears the sound of the door opening and wonders if the Grand Duke has finally returned, but she is surprised that the newcomer is Arkid, who calls her name, surprised by her presence. Rowena pulls herself together and enthusiastically asks him if his sword training went well. Arkid replies in the affirmative, but asks her with concern why she is standing in this cold, making Rowena stumble in her answer. Arkid approaches her and touches her face, noticing how cold it is and gently scolds her for being here when she hasn't fully recovered from her illness yet. He expresses his fear that she might catch a cold and Rowena is surprised and overwhelmed with happiness, wondering privately if he is truly worried about her at this moment. He asks her directly if she was waiting for him, and she admits that she was, confirming to herself that she indeed was. Arkid is surprised by her answer and asks her in a serious tone why she waited all this time. Rowena responds with a bright smile, simply telling him that he is her husband. Her answer triggers his confusion, causing his face to flush with embarrassment, leaving Rowena puzzled by his reaction. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of the butler, who informs Rowena that the Grand Duke will not be able to enter the castle. Rowena is surprised by this news and asks the servant if something bad has happened. The servant explains seriously that there was a problem on the way here. The servant reveals a disaster, as the ice mountain volcano erupted while the Duke's carriage was passing. And due to the instability of the ground, the Duke will be forced to stay in a hotel that night, causing Rowena to scream in shock upon hearing this news. Meanwhile, at her residence, the Duchess receives a letter from Hatel Ross Castle, hoping the two children are not causing any trouble. It turns out the letter is from Rowena, which begins with a formal greeting to her husband's parents, then moves to praise Arkid, noting that he is managing the castle very well in their absence. The Duchess marvels at the level of responsibility Arkid shows despite being only 14 years old. But she soon wonders sarcastically if Rowena wrote this letter just to brag about her husband, the same girl who was screaming her hatred for him just a few days ago. The Duchess thinks that if it were last year, this news wouldn't have weighed so heavily on her chest. Suddenly, her room door opens and the Grand Duke enters to her surprise. She coldly asks him why he came and reminds him that he acted as if he would stay away from her until dawn. So, the Duke asks her sarcastically if he needs permission to enter her room now. The Duke comments that it seems she doesn't care at all about her husband's suffering in the cold. She replies that it is unreasonable to expect her to look for someone who left in anger on his own. Frustration appears on the Duke and he thinks that he expected her to say that, then describes her as cold-hearted. His description sparks her anger, and she wonders to herself how he dares describe her as cold-hearted. He who doesn't even dare come to her room without thinking about the gaze of others. She confronts him directly, telling him that he should have openly declared that their relationship, as a Duke couple, is worse than that of strangers. The Duke explains his position seriously, telling her that he left because he thought his presence would make her feel uncomfortable. The Duchess grabs his tie and pulls him violently toward her, screaming in his face that he is the one who feels uncomfortable, and that he is the one who left her behind on that day. It is revealed through her memories that she was abandoned on their first wedding night. And then she tells him to stop throwing the blame on her. The Duchess asks him sharply if he means they should go to bed now, then approaches him with a bold look and tells him she can do that immediately if he wants. The Duke is deeply flustered by her boldness and retreats trembling. She looks at him with a mocking smile, thinking that he truly feels uncomfortable. At the castle, news arrives of the delay in the Duke and Duchess's return due to heavy snow. Rowena wonders if it always snows this much. So Hannah tells her that the season was dry until last year, wondering if the spirits are moody. The mention of spirits piques Rowena's interest, and she thinks that this reminds her that she is inside a fantasy novel. Her thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the door, and a voice asking if he can enter. Rowena recognizes the voice and stands up enthusiastically, declaring that if it is Arkid, he can enter at any time. Ark enters the room wearing a heavy winter coat. Rowena asks him if he is going somewhere, and he tells her there is a problem at the eastern coal mine and that he is going to check on it. Rowena realizes with concern that she will be the only person left in the castle. Arkid notices her concern and invites her to come with him if she wishes. He explains to her that she hasn't been able to go out at all because of the snow, and he thought she might be feeling bored from staying locked inside. Rowena rejoices at the offer and enthusiastically declares that she is not against the idea at all. In fact, she was already feeling bored. Arkid smiles because he is happy with her agreement and tells her the carriage is waiting and they should go together. On their way, Rowena thinks with disappointment that she was looking forward to a romantic date, but finds herself on a business trip. Upon their arrival at the mine entrance, she realizes the place is surrounded by Delos flowers and thinks that it is a minefield for her. Arkid notices the flowers and scolds the person in charge of the mine, reminding him that he ordered him to ensure no Delos flowers were in the area, and asks him what happened. The official apologizes in confusion, explaining that the flowers were not there until that morning, but appeared suddenly. Rowena realizes this explanation is illogical and fears she will get into trouble and go to the other world if she inhales the pollen. Arkid confronts the official in anger, asking if he expects him to believe he didn't notice all these flowers. The official defends himself, insisting that what he says is the truth and wondering why anyone would plant flowers in a coal mine where Mona stones are being extracted. Arkid orders him to stop making excuses and promises he will hold him accountable for this negligence later. The official looks as if he is about to die from the severity of the injustice against him. But Rowena feels no sympathy for him, as she was the one who almost died because of his negligence, and she thinks he deserves what is happening to him. Arkid advises her to stay inside. So she wonders to herself if she has traveled all this way just to stay inside again. Rowena realizes that Arkid is worried about her, and that she cannot reveal her allergy. Now, it is revealed that the fact of her allergy to Delos flowers was secret information, and that her incompatibility with the symbol of the Hattal Ross territory was considered a major flaw for the young Duchess. Rowena decides to find an alternative solution, telling Arkid she can cover her nose with a handkerchief, and that there is another entrance to the mine anyway. Upon entering the mine through the other entrance, Rowena is dazzled by the magical view, as the walls sparkle like a collection of stars, and they realize these lights are proof of the high purity of the mones. Arkid asks the official if he is saying this massive amount of deposits had not been discovered until now. So the official replies that even the miners didn't know, but the heavy snow caused the ground to sink and the mine suddenly appeared. The official adds that it is like a trick played by the spirits. So Rowena wonders to herself about the meaning of the word spirit. Rowena suddenly remembers an important event from the novel where, at around this time, a land blessed by the spirits appeared, and she believes it was a mine owned by the Grand Duchess. Arkid asks the official sharply if it is possible he found the mine earlier, and hid it intentionally, which the official strongly denies, insisting he wouldn't dare embezzle the Grand Duke's property. Arid decides to check the records of the past 3 months to be sure. So the official asks with concern if he will review them all. Arkid looks at him coldly and asks if there is a problem with that. Arkad scolds him, saying he couldn't even handle the task he assigned him previously, and therefore reviewing the records is a natural procedure. Rowena thinks about how precise and dedicated he is to his work, and that this is her husband's charm. The official immediately agrees and suggests they head to the office, while Rowena thinks that it is truly suspicious that they miss discovering a mine of this size. Suddenly, Rowena feels a mysterious force pulling her, and is surprised by the strange sensation. Rowena trips and falls into a gap that suddenly appeared in the ground, and Arkad screams her name in panic. Arkad tries to grab her hand, but fails, so she falls into the abyss while he screams her name again. In the darkness, Rowena hears voices wondering if she is lost, suggesting sending her back, while another voice says she looks interesting and suggests asking her to live with them. Rowena wakes up and finds herself in a strange place, wondering where she is. She realizes she is lying on a bed of Delos flowers and panics. She jumps up in fear and screams. Then hears a voice asking if she is all right. She turns around in confusion and asks who is there. So another voice answers her that she can hear them and directs her to its location. Rowena sees a glowing butterfly and wonders if it is the one speaking. So the voice replies that they are not butterflies. The butterfly transforms into a creature resembling a fairy and declares it is one of the spirits that humans name. The spirit approaches Rowena, expressing happiness at meeting a human who can see them after a long time, and asks her to show her face. Rowena refuses, explaining she cannot because of her allergy, and that she almost died once because of Delos flowers. The spirit marvels at Rowena's ability to sense Delphina, explaining to her that what sorcerers call mana is actually power derived from Delphina, and that mana stones form in places where spirits eat Delphina and leave their remains. The spirit concludes that the cause of Rowena's illness is that her body directly absorbed high-purity Delphina. So Rowena wonders if this matter is more dangerous. Another spirit laughs and finds it cute, then asks Rowena if she feels pain now. Rowena is surprised that she doesn't feel any pain. Instead, she feels full of energy. Another spirit reassures her, explaining that a body that has fully awakened within the Delphina's sphere of influence no longer rejects it. Another spirit adds that they were all born as spirits through the same pain, and that it is a natural phenomenon. One of the spirits tells her she is human, but has a very unique composition, and that her body overflows with rich Delphina they have never seen before. Another spirit suggests that she will be full if she makes a contract with her, declaring she wants her. So, Rowena thinks this is a warning they will eat her. One of the spirits explains that if she makes a contract with them, she can use their power, and she can also use the Delphina within her to purify polluted lands, which shocks Rowena with this possibility. Rowena remembers that according to the original story, land pollution is rare now, but it will start soon, and only then will Saint Mabel come to the capital to purify the land. She also remembers that the saint will have her fateful meeting with Zeronius, who will be trapped in the polluted land. Rowena realizes with joy that if she becomes a spirit summoner, her future might change as well. Meanwhile, Arkad's men were searching for Rowena in the mine in vain, and one of them tells him she is not there either. Arkad feels anger and frustration, wondering how this could happen. As they search the entire mine without finding a trace of her, one of his men tries to persuade him to go out for a rest. Noting that he has been searching for hours, Arkad explodes in anger, asking his man how he expects him to sit and rest while his wife's life is on the line. Arkad feels deep regret and blames himself because he asked her to go out with him. He remembers she was the first person to ever believe in him. Even if her change of heart was just a whim, it was more than he deserved. So, he tried not to hope for more. But he fears now that if Rowena disappears like this, Rowena appears before him out of nowhere, and he calls her name in disbelief. He rushes toward her and grabs her, surrounded by a halo of glowing butterflies. Rowena notices the amount of sweat on his face and asks him how long he has been running and searching. So he tells her how could he stay still when she had disappeared before his very eyes. He admits to her that he was terrified by the idea that she was gone forever. Rowena smiles and asks him if he was worried about her. She approaches him and touches his face gently while the guards feel embarrassed by this intimate scene. Rowena talks to the spirits, scolding them because they didn't tell her that 3 hours had passed. So, one spirit answers her that humans always make a fuss about such a short period, while another spirit mocks the haste of humans. One spirit asks if this is her husband and comments that she cares a lot about the appearance of men. Rowena screams at the spirit in anger, ordering it to stop this nonsense and show its physical form. Arkad calls Rowena and suggests they leave the mine immediately, so she asks him if something is wrong. He explains to her that the Taoist flowers at the entrance fully bloomed then disappeared, and they don't know when or where they might appear again. He adds that it is also strange to see butterflies at this depth of the mine. So, Rowena realizes her husband is observant and decides they should head to their residence first. Meanwhile, the Duchess receives a letter from Rowena suggesting the development of the Ibis mine. The Duchess is surprised by this bold proposal and thinks she has become very aggressive in business. After getting a little money, the Duchess realizes that the presence of a spirit that blesses dry land and makes it fertile with a single touch will raise the value of the mine tremendously. She concludes this is very precious land that cannot be simply handed over to her husband Damien. The Grand Duke suddenly arrives at the Duchess's room. She asks him why he came and he tells her he thinks they can leave for the castle tomorrow, although clearing the snow might take some time. She asks him why he takes the trouble to come himself instead of sending a servant. He answers that he heard a letter had arrived for her. The Duchess realizes he knows the content of the letter. The Duke concludes from her reaction that he is right, noting that she seems to be corresponding with someone frequently. He asks her sarcastically if she has found herself a lover, and the Duchess is shocked by the absurdity of what he is saying. The Duchess asks sarcastically why he has the right to do that while she does not. So he answers that he doesn't mind at all if she meets whomever she wishes. The Duke confirms to her that he does not intend to interfere in her romantic affairs. The Duchess cuts him off in anger, ordering him to be silent and tells him she is not a profligate like him, then pushes him away and tells him that if he wants to have an affair with someone, let him do so as he pleases. She screams in his face that she has absolutely no interest in this matter. She kicks the Duke out of the room while he feels insulted. Realizing it is the first time she has closed the door first and that her leaving the door open was always her way of allowing him in. And he describes himself as a fool. At the castle, Rowena receives a letter from the Duchess in which she agrees to her terms if what she says is true, asking her to return to the castle with proof of obtaining the spirit's blessing. Rowena reads the letter stating that the Duchess trusts her words and will move forward with the plan. Rowena rejoices and ensures the Duchess is at least ready to strike a deal with her. She realizes she must prove the existence of spirits now. One spirit tells her she cannot fulfill any request to reveal herself. Rowena is surprised by this refusal and reminds the spirit that she manifested in the mine without her even asking. The spirit explains that if their contract is revealed, Rowena will be in danger. The spirit explains that spirit summoners derive their energy from the earth to manifest their abilities. In ancient times, they had to form groups and unite their power to perform purification. Rowena becomes angry and wonders if the spirit is saying she cannot do anything alone. Rowena accuses the spirit of deceiving her, and that this is a fraudulent contract. So the spirit explains that this is the general case. The spirit adds that the power provided by the earth is divided by the number of summoners. But Rowena is the only Holy Spirit summoner in this era, which means she has monopolized all the power for herself. Rowena realizes enthusiastically that she is incredibly powerful. But the spirit warns her that for this reason she must not let others know she is a spirit summoner. Rowena wonders why she shouldn't be welcomed. So, the spirit tells her that if she knew the reason for the disappearance of spirit summoners, she wouldn't want to reveal her identity. The spirit adds in a serious tone that she doesn't want to lose her contractor again. Rowena is surprised by the spirit's sudden seriousness, as she thought it only knew how to chatter and eat. Rowena tells the spirit that there are many ways to convince the Duchess, and she thinks someone might be able to find the evidence she needs. It turns out this person is known as a spirit geek, who previously received a reward for verifying a mind's blessing while searching for traces of spirits. And luckily for her, he will be passing by soon. Rowena feels excited and thinks she can smell the money flowing to her. She asks the spirits to provide another piece of evidence, and they offer her a stone with a print resembling a bear's claw. So, she mocks them and compares them to bears. One spirit explains that this sparkling dust is proof of their existence. So Rowena asks her to sprinkle more of it to make the matter more convincing. The spirit wonders why she doesn't simply ask them to manifest and stomp around the place. Rowena is surprised that they can do that. The spirit tells her she is mean and begs her not to say scary things with such a beautiful face. So Rowena laughs and tells her she was only joking. Rowena thinks to herself that someone like Henry Connor would recognize even a trace like this and wonders if he has heard the news already. Elsewhere, a man nearly 30 years old sits and thinks that he hasn't even seen a spirit's toe, but he knows they exist. The man, who turns out to be Henry Connor, declares with determination that he will see a spirit before he dies, even if it costs him his life. Henry sits in a tavern and hears someone asking his companion if he is all right. His companion tells him he heard the Duke of Hatel Ross and his wife close the mine, and the other replies in anger that the Duchess disappeared in the mine, and they all almost lost their minds. He adds that while they were searching for her everywhere, she was busy digging for an artifact. The man explains everyone thought it was just a rock, but they say now it is a fossil with the spirit's footprint. Henry breaks into the discussion and grabs the man by his shoulder. He asks him in shock if he just said spirit's footprint. Outside, Rowena's guards are surprised by Henry's sudden appearance. They draw their swords and order him to stop. So, Henry asks them if the lady with them is the Duchess of Hatel Ross. Henry raises his hands in surrender and introduces himself as Henry Connor of the Connor family, swearing he is not a suspicious person. He tells Rowena that he came because he has a question he would like to ask her. Rowena recognizes the family name and allows him to speak, so he asks her directly about the fossil she discovered recently. He politely asks her to let him take a look at it if it is not an inconvenience. Rowena asks him sarcastically if it would bother him much, and Henry is struck by shock and confusion. He pleads desperately and Rowena thinks that he spent 10 years searching for spirits yet possesses no social skills. So Rowena tells him it is rude to ask for a favor without compensation. Henry offers her money in exchange for seeing the fossil. Rowena notices a colorful pocket watch on his waist. She tells him to give her the watch, and she will show him the fossil. Henry is surprised by her request, explaining it is not an ordinary watch for knowing the time, but Rowena insists she wants it because its design pleases her. Henry yields to her wish and gives her the watch. Rowena agrees and asks him to follow her, promising to show him the fossil as promised. At the palace, Arkid coldly asks about this man she brought, commenting that he hasn't heard of the Connor family before. Rowena reassures him that the man keeps his promises, then asks him to hand over the watch. So, Henry asks her if she is sure of her decision. Henry confirms again that it is not an ordinary tool for knowing time. So, Arkid asks him what it is. Henry explains that it is a device that detects the spirit's blessing and that if a certain button is pressed. Suddenly, the watch starts ringing loudly. Henry is confused and wonders if it is broken. While Rowena thinks the cause is the presence of the real spirits hovering around her. Henry gets excited and the spirits appear. One of them saying it contains dried Delos flower powder and commenting that it looks delicious. Rowena thinks to herself that they really love this powder. Rowena comments that he must be truly devoted to spirits to carry such a watch. Henry admits he started this search because he was fascinated by them. He adds that people say it's just a legend, but a story that has lasted all this time cannot be baseless, and that people still blame spirits whenever something happens that cannot be explained. Rowena remembers the mine manager made a similar joke. So Henry asks her if something happened in the mine. Arkad tells Henry that many things happened, such as Delos flowers suddenly blooming then disappearing. He adds, there are ominous rumors about a ghost appearing, and at this rate, the mine might be abandoned. Rowena screams to herself, refusing to lose her precious mine. Henry interrupts enthusiastically, confirming this is certainly not the work of a ghost. Arid asks him coldly how he can know that, so Henry asks him to let him ask some questions first. Rowena thinks to herself that this might be a blessing for the Hadros family, and that the perfect opportunity is before her. Now elsewhere, the Duchess asks her husband if he has thought about the proposal she presented last time. The Duke asks her if there is a specific reason for her intense interest in this mine, noting its revenue has been stopped for a long time, and it is not worth all this effort. She tells him she has a project she wanted to start for a while, and that she will buy it at market price, so he loses nothing. After a moment of hesitation, the Duke agrees and tells her to take it. The Duke adds that this is considered an apology for his reckless remarks. The Duke apologizes in turn, admitting he was out of sorts that day and said things he shouldn't have said. The Duchess comments, it's good at least that he admits it, and she prefers to finish the paperwork today, so he doesn't change his mind. The Duke smiles, commenting that she is truly a unique personality. The Duke agrees and tells her he will send the documents by the end of the day. Before he leaves, she turns to him and tells him there is something he should know. She reveals to him that the letter she received was from their daughter-in-law, not from another man. And his face flushes with embarrassment. The Duke stands in his room thinking the letter was from her all along. He asks his butler if there is any news from Arkad or his wife. The servant answers in the negative, so the Duke feels sad. Meanwhile, Rowena receives a letter from the Grand Duke and realizes he is grumbling and demanding she write him a letter. She sighs and decides to do so for Arkad's sake. While she is about to write, she hears a knock on the door and wonders who it might be. For Arkad should be at the mine. She is surprised. The knocker is Henry, who enthusiastically tells her he has good news. She asks him eagerly if they have already received a response to the spirit trace they sent to the Imperial Palace. She marvels at how quickly they moved, as they only talked about the matter on the day they met. Henry confirms they will send an Imperial delegation. So, Rowena rejoices, realizing anything related to spirits is handled with lightning speed. She thinks happily that nothing remains but for their pockets to be filled with money, and that she cannot keep this good news to herself. In the mine, Arkad looks at the mine carts filled with sparkling mana stones and thinks all this is thanks to the spirits. He holds Henry's watch and thinks that the spirit's blessing is truly incredible. Rowena calls him while waving to him from afar. When she approaches him, she hears the sound of something breaking from the watch. Arkad holds the watch and inspects it, wondering if it has shattered. At that moment, one of the small spirits manifests on the watch and licks the powder inside, commenting that its taste is exactly like Delos flowers. Rowena notices what's happening and rushes toward Arched, pretending there is dust on his hand to divert his attention. She forcefully pushes the spirit away. So, the small spirit cries out in pain that she hit it so hard she almost crushed it so he wouldn't notice. Rowena sighs in relief, because she narrowly avoided the situation. Arkad calls Rowena and asks her if she came to welcome him. Happiness fills Rowena's heart from his kindness, and she thinks how sweet he is. She tells him she has some news to pass to him. She explains to him that the spirit's blessing can now be officially evaluated, and that Henry will welcome the imperial delegation upon its arrival, meaning they can return to the castle now. Ark is surprised and asks her if she traveled all this distance just to tell him this. She answers with a smile that she wanted to tell him as soon as possible. He gently scolds her because she went out in this cold and should have waited for him at the hotel. Arkad approaches her and puts his scarf around her neck, telling her that this way she will feel warmer. And Rowena is surprised by his scent emanating from the scarf. She pretends to be shy and tells him her hands are cold too, while one spirit notices she is trying to get close to him. Arkad smiles and agrees with her that the weather is truly cold today. He holds her hand and asks her if they are ready to go. Rowena is shocked by his boldness and wonders to herself if he has experience in these matters. Upon their return to the castle, they are received by the butler and maids. Rowena welcomes one of the maids, Vivian, and asks her how she is. She answers she is fine and asks about the paper she is carrying. Rowena tells her it's a contract and proudly explains she brought a loyal slave, or rather a reliable assistant, which is Henry Connor, who will dedicate himself entirely to spirit research with her support. Rowena thinks to herself that since she's back, she must find another assistant as well. Rowena summons Lord Cabasstein and tells him he must be exhausted after his long trip. He answers that he heard she asked to see him as soon as she arrived. She tells him seriously she has something very important to tell him. She presents him with a hotel stay voucher and tells him she obtained permission from her father-in-law to give him a vacation. She adds that she wrote a letter herself to ensure him this precious vacation and asks him to go and rest as much as he likes. Lord Cobaste is struck with shock, realizing it is a voucher for a stay at the Yale Hotel, a 5-star hotel that requires booking a year in advance. His servant is also surprised and asks him if he sees what he sees. Lord Cobaste asks him to leave his hand. Rowena proudly explains the Yale Hotel belongs to her family, the April family, and immediate family members receive priority vouchers. The servant realizes this room was reserved for the Grand Duchess. The servant begs his master to take him with him in his suitcase, for this is a private suite that cannot be stayed in even with money. But Lord Cobstein refuses his request. Rowena tells them she prepared a carriage, as well so they can travel in comfort. Lord Cobaste objects that this is too much, and that he is content with riding a horse. So Rowena tells him she cannot let him ride a horse all this distance. Lord Cobstein feels deep gratitude and tells her he doesn't know how he will repay her kindness. She asks him not to feel the burden and tells him, with a smile, he has a lot of work waiting for him upon his return, so he must ensure he gets a good amount of rest. Lord Cobstein gets excited and promises her he will accomplish anything she asks of him. Rowena thinks to herself that she succeeded in tricking him. While he leaves, Hannah comments with envy on his going on vacation to Ailing, wondering if the young masters are okay. Hannah tells Rowena they were a bit harsh, but they truly adored her. Hannah confirms they miss her a lot and asks Rowena if she doesn't miss them, too. Rowena thinks of the April family twins, Elazar, who is very popular for his cat-like face and athletic body, and Kyle, who resembled him, but with a cold, intellectual aura that earned him permanent admiration. She remembers both had bad personalities, but they were weak before the main heroine, and their love for her seemed like a distorted affection, confusing her with their late younger sister. Hannah interrupts her thoughts and tells her she heard her father and mother are returning, so Rowena suggests they prepare in advance. Hannah tells her the maids are already preparing to welcome them, but Rowena feels this formal reception is too dry. Rowena decides she wants to raise the level of their approval of her. A brilliant idea for welcoming them occurs to her. Upon the arrival of the Duke and Duchess, Rowena welcomes them enthusiastically, calling them mother and father. Rowena and Arkad surprise them as they stand on the stairs carrying banners congratulating them on their safe return. Rowena raises a banner reading Milk White Elena. The angels are looking for their lost goddess. The Duchess is shocked by this scene while the Duke tries to stifle his laughter, whispering that they are calling her the goddess. Arkad welcomes them while carrying a banner reading, Damien, the inevitable man. Once you enter, there's no exit, sparking the Duchess's laughter. The Duchess comments, This is the first time she has received a welcome like this. Rowena whispers in Arkid's ear to start now. Arkid presents his mother with a bouquet of flowers and tells her it's a gift. He tells her he was waiting for her, and that he's happy she's back. The Duchess embraces Rowena and Archie and thanks them, but asks them not to do it again. Rowena thinks this scene must look amusing to everyone. Later, Hannah asks Rowena how she came up with this brilliant idea. One of the maids tells her everyone was staring at them and the scene was very cute, wishing she had brought an artist with her to paint it. The other maid agrees with her and Rowena gets excited, remembering how Arkid was fidgeting with embarrassment, screaming that everyone should have seen that. Rowena thinks she must make Kobe create a recording stone for her as soon as he arrives. Rowena notices from the window that everyone is unusually busy today, so Hannah tells her they are preparing for the upcoming banquet. Rowena remembers they said a delegation from the Imperial Palace is coming and wonders about lending them the entire villa. One of the spirits explains to Rowena that the contract binding them is what makes it easy for it to track her traces. In fact, manifesting in this form only became possible after forming the contract with her. Rowena wonders if spirits turn into magic stones when they eat Delphina. To which another spirit replies that even those remains need to accumulate for a long time before forming into a magic stone. Rowena realizes she has found the goose that lays golden eggs. While the little spirit describes her as greedy, and at that moment, the Grand Duchess appears and calls out to Rowena. Rowena turns enthusiastically and calls her mother-in-law mother. Rowena is surprised when she notices a man standing next to her mother-in-law. The Duchess introduces the man as the head of the visiting delegation. She reveals his identity as Duke Douglas Ethel, and the name Ethel echoes in Rowena's mind. Rowena immediately remembers that this is the family of the villainess Catherine from the original novel. Duke Ethel greets Rowena warmly, telling her that he has heard much about her, and that her mother-in-law hasn't stopped praising her. Rowena looks at her mother-in-law in surprise while the Duchess looks away in embarrassment, claiming she hadn't praised her that much. The Duke continues, adding that he also heard about her wonderful achievement at the recent festival. He then expresses his wish that his daughter Cathy could be even half as wonderful as the young Grand Duchess. The Duchess asks if Catherine is roughly the same age as Rowena, and the Duke replies that she is completely obsessed with horseback riding these days and always returns home injured, which Rowena thinks doesn't suit her at all. The Duchess suggests she should prepare some effective ointments for her, and the Duke expresses his pleasure, saying she understands his daughter well. As expected, the Duke jokingly asks her if it's because she went through the same experience, to which the Duchess replies that she believes she fell from her horse far fewer times than he did. The Duke feels embarrassed while the Duchess laughs, and Rowena wonders to herself if they knew each other before. Rowena concludes that since Douglas belongs to the Imperial faction, and her mother-in-law is of royal blood, they were likely close in the past. She adds in her thoughts that the Grand Duke, her father-in-law, must have been in the capital at that time as well. Suddenly, their conversation is interrupted by a voice asking why they are talking so happily, and Duke Ethel's expression changes. Grand Duke Damien suddenly appears before them. Rowena greets him, calling him father, and asks if he went out for a walk, to which he replies in the affirmative, but he adds that he went out to rest, yet now feels even more tired. The Grand Duke addresses his guests, asking if there is anything uncomfortable about his stay. Duke Ethel replies that he is enjoying his time and meeting an old friend after a long time. But he hints that someone is constantly intercepting his letters. The Grand Duke responds sharply, asking, "Isn't it rude to keep writing to someone who has a family, even if they are friends?" making Rowena feel the intense tension in the air. Duke Ethel smiles and tells him not to misunderstand the pure friendship he shares with the Duchess, adding that a dirty mind sees dirt everywhere. The Grand Duke scoffs at the word pure, and reminds him that he used to follow the Duchess everywhere when they were children, and that Duke Ethel was no different from him then. The Duchess covers Rowena's face from the situation, saying that anything that might be misunderstood should be avoided in front of the child, but Rowena protests that she wants to see what happens. The Duchess sharply asks her husband if he touched her letters, and he claims it was just an accident. The Duchess demands the letters back, but he coldly tells her that he already burned them. The Duchess mockingly asks how one can accidentally pick out Douglas's letters alone and burn them, to which the Grand Duke replies with apparent coldness that it simply seems to be the case. She asks if he really thinks she is that shallow, and he replies in the affirmative immediately, so she sighs and concludes that it must be related to the Ivers mine incident. The Duke admits he still feels bitter about that matter, and the Duchess realizes she was right in her guess. After this tense discussion ends, Duke Ethel asks to be excused. Before leaving, Duke Ethel invites Rowena to visit the capital in the future and promises to introduce her to his daughter. He describes his daughter as a bit clumsy, but a good child and believes they will get along well. While Rowena thinks to herself with a flat refusal of the idea of befriending the villainess, Rowena concludes that the original Rowena's personality, with its fiery nature, might have gotten along with her. But she prefers not to get involved. After standing for a long time, Rowena begins to complain that her legs are starting to ache. The Grand Duke turns to his wife and offers to accompany her, but the Duchess ignores his offer and takes Rowena's hand to leave together, impressing Rowena, who thinks to herself with pride that this is her mother. Later, Rowena sits alone in a glass garden, wondering why she is stuck here alone, despite the beautiful weather and the splendor of everything around her. The Grand Duke calls out to her and tells her it seems the Duchess is angry with him. Rowena replies coldly that she knows nothing about it, thinking that if he intended to complain, he should at least offer her some cake first. The Duke adds that he feels his wife has been constantly avoiding him lately. And Rowena is surprised that he only noticed it now. The Duke guesses that the reason for the Duchess's anger must be his burning of Douglas's letter, and Rowena wonders why he suddenly brought up the subject of Duke Ethel. The Duke explains that this is why he is asking her for a favor and offers her a piece of cake. The Grand Duke seriously asks Rowena to watch Duke Ethel for him. He adds that scoundrel seems lenient with her for some reason, which rouses Rowena's displeasure. To convince her, the Duke places a book on the table, and Rowena freezes in place when she sees it. Rowena realizes this is her diary in which she recorded everything about Arkid from his birth, height, and blood type, information she obtained with great effort from the butler. She wonders in horror why the diary is in the Grand Duke's possession, then smiles and claims she was indeed looking for it, and thanks her father for finding it. When she tries to take the diary, the Duke pulls it away, declaring that whoever finds something owns it. He adds coldly that the castle is his as well, and since he found the diary on his land, it is now his, making Rowena angry as she thinks he confirms her suspicions that he suffers from a personality disorder. The Duke offers her a deal. If she does this favor and watches Duke Ethel until he leaves, he will give her the diary. But Rowena protests that it was hers to begin with. The Duke replies coldly that it is his now, and Rowena thinks about killing him. But in the end, she gives in and agrees to his request. Watching Duke Ethel was not a difficult task at all for Rowena. She had become an expert at watching Arkid, so it was easy for her. Rowena later tells the Grand Duke that Duke Ethel won the chess match, making the score between him and the Duchess a tie with 2 goals each. The Grand Duke looks exhausted and tells her he could play chess with her, too. Rowena playfully asks if he wants to play, but mocks him by saying she knows he will have a tantrum if he loses. Rowena reflects to herself, thinking that since her father-in-law has a face exactly like Arkid's, she can't even stay angry at him for long, convincing herself that she endures all this only for Arkid's sake. But she soon realizes that watching Duke Ethel is just a pretext, and that her father-in-law is actually trying to prevent him from being alone with the Grand Duchess. Rowena brings her observation to the Grand Duke, noting that her mother-in-law and Duke Ethel seem perfectly in sync, to which the Duke replies sharply that the real harmony was originally between him and the Duchess, and that they were much closer. Rowena gently disagrees, explaining that from what she has seen, her mother-in-law seems more comfortable in Duke Ethel's company. The Duke mocks her, saying she must be enjoying this little observation game. Then he adds arrogantly, wondering how a child like her could understand adult matters. The Grand Duke stands and leaves the place in anger, leaving Rowena to wonder in confusion if they really were in sync in the past, and if so, she wonders why their relationship suddenly deteriorated like this. Later, while Rowena was arranging flowers in the garden, Vivian comments that it's unusual to see her doing such work. Rowena replies with feigned seriousness that as a noble woman she needs to refine her various talents. But Vivian teases her, telling her to stop with the excuses, and that she is waiting for the young master arched, as she is always peeking out the window at this time, which embarrasses Rowena. In the midst of her confusion while scolding Vivian for talking about her private life, Rowena pricks her finger on a rose thorn while the maid tries to warn her too late. Rowena screams in pain and blames Vivian for not telling her sooner, while the maid asks with concern if she's okay. Vivian immediately rushes to bring some ointment. Arkid suddenly appears, calling Rowena with concern and asking if she has been hurt. Rowena reassures him that she only pricked herself with a thorn, but he notices she is bleeding a little. Rowena thinks to herself in amazement at his boldness today, wondering if he